This presentation is going to be about Jacob Lawrence's Going Home artwork, which is the piece that you see on the screen. In this presentation, we'll be going over the different elements that are used in this piece of artwork and different principles of art that are being used in this, and how the artist used it to create the whole design as one. So about the piece, it's a very elegant piece of art. To give a little background, Lawrence, who actually composed the piece, was in the Coast Guard, and this artwork was about when they were getting sent home from the war, and it's like displaying a message of distaste. So it's like saying how the soldiers that were coming home felt about the war, and that's what the focal point of the artwork is. That's why in the background it's all blue and different shades of blue, because the artist wanted the image to pop in the middle with the different colors and different shades of the men, because he wants you to focus on that. He wants you to see their facial features. He wants you to see the different colors and the different design details that he put in that piece of art. First, we'll be talking about the elements of art and what that means. It's a tool used to create the piece of art. The elements that there's 7 elements of art, those being line, color, value, space, shape, form, and texture. As you can see in the image on your right, those are all the elements of art. And in this one, he chooses to use 3 different elements that we'll be talking about. The first one is line, second one being color, and the third one being value. And we will go deeper into that as we get into the presentation. The next is principles of design. This is when you actually use the elements to create and compose your design. In total, there are 9, those being balance, contrast, emphasis, pattern, proportion, harmony, rhythm or movement, those could be interchangeable, unity, and variety. So he also uses multitudes of these within the artwork, and the few that we will be talking about is going to be emphasis, and then proportion and rhythm as well. So we will get into those in a minute as we move on, but first we're going to actually hop back to the elements of art, and we're going to start off with line. So line is a starting point for a piece of artwork. When you're creating a piece, or really anything, when you're writing a word, you start with one line and then you branch off of that. So that's what all the artwork stems from. The lines can have many different meanings, and there's also many different types of lines. So for example, horizontal, vertical, zigzag, diagonal, broken lines, curved, squiggly lines, stuff like that. Those are all the different types of lines. And then the meaning of lines, if we look deeper into this, the meaning of lines in this one, as you can see, there's lots of horizontal lines. The horizontal lines throughout the image in the blue background is really where you can see it the most, where you can see the horizontal drawings. And if you dig deeper into that, that's represent a distance or a longing from home. So if you think about that, these soldiers have been away for so long, and now they're finally getting to come home, but they've had a longing for home for so long, and that's probably all that they're thinking about, being out there on that sea. So that's a really, really detailed piece by that artist right there, putting that in there. The next element we're going to talk about is color. So there's warm and cool colors, and then there's primary and secondary, and then even tertiary colors, but we will not get into that into this presentation. And a color can create a mood or tone, and that is really the main focal point here. So the mood being the blues on the color wheel, greens and purples, all those cool colors can create kind of a darker tone, kind of dampen the mood, and that's kind of what the author wants to get here. He wants you to feel how the soldiers were feeling when they were coming back home from the war. So, I mean, that's why, in my opinion, he chooses those colors. There's also the bright, the primary red color in there. I think that just can just draw your attention to it. When you mix the primary and secondary colors, as you can see, the primary red color and the secondary green color on there, if you look at the hand of the soldier who looks like something badly's happened to his hand, and it could be a bandage on that, the red is, the lines pop out because they're mixing with that green jacket or green coloring of whatever that soldier is wearing. So that is how you can use primary and secondary color, and that is how this artist used it. And it creates color can create a sense of individuality. So with each artist, they can choose different colors to use, and it can really make their artwork signature to them. So the artist, we're going to start by talking about how he uses blue. For me, I think the blue represents the sea, because you can see the boats, they're coming back home from the war on the ships. That's how I think the blue is represented in this. The brown's representation is to be known as peace. I can think that in a sense of they're coming back home from the war, so that means that their minds are more at ease, even though they may have a distaste for what happened and why they had to go to war and all the lives that were lost, but at least they can feel at peace that they're not going to be involved and they're going to come home and get to see their families. The black is kind of like a mysterious. You can see that the black is on the soldiers' heads, so it could be a way of what they're thinking. Like, was it really worth it? Should we be happy now? Should we be sad for all the lives that were lost? You can see it's on several of the soldiers on the Coast Guard on their heads. The red and the white, I think, represents the bandages and the wounds that the soldiers took, and not just these soldiers, these individual soldiers, but the whole, army, the whole force, United States force as a whole, because I think that can represent the damages that everybody took during that time. And then the green. Green can actually represent a little bit of a healing power, but in this picture it could also represent the uniform. So I think the brown could also do that as representing like a jacket or like a blanket as a uniform as well. Next element is value. Value speaks to the lightness and darkness of a picture or a design, and that is from the visual elements. The focal point in this, like we said, is the men. And the different shades of value that were used throughout this artwork. The different blues and the different shades of browns and greens with the little tiny yellow in there. The darkness and lightness of the photo really makes the men look three-dimensional and really makes them stand out to you. So that when the artist was composing this piece, he wanted you to focus on the men and not what was happening in the background. So I think value is very important to any piece of design, but I think that Lawrence displayed value at this piece of art extremely well. Making the background a plain blue with different shades, you can tell that those are boats because of the value. All the colors are blue, but he uses the different values of the blue to make them stand out like they're three-dimensional. Next we have is emphasis. And emphasis is the use of visual elements to draw attention to a certain area of artwork. Usually the focal point is the point of emphasis on a piece, and then that is from Scott et al. It's an article about what are principles of art. And I chose to put this picture on the right because it really explains what emphasis is. So you have all of these, assume they're colored pencils, and all of them are black and white. And then you have the one that has the purple and it's in color. When you first look at that image, that is the first thing that your eyes are drawn to. It's the same thing with Lawrence's piece on the left. When you first look at that image, you do not notice the little details on the boats. You might not even notice that they are boats, because the first thing that you're going to look at is the different colors and the emphasis he puts on the men that are in the boat. And I think that's what he wants to draw your attention to first, is their facial expressions, the bandages that they have. And that is why emphasis, this principle of design for emphasis, is so crucial in this piece. The next principle of design is proportion. Proportion refers to the relationship between elements in a composition, from the same Scott et al. This is where the men and the boats come into play here. The picture on the right is the little tiny circles getting bigger. That's showing you a scale or proportion. They are also interchangeable. And the men on the left, if you look at them compared to the size of the boats, obviously those men wouldn't fit in those boats. Once again, going back to emphasis, that is because the author wanted you to see the men first instead of looking what was in the boat. The boats are smaller for a reason, because he doesn't want to draw your attention to the boats. He wants you to draw your attention to the men. And then look at the proportions on the men and their faces. Those proportions are accurate. The eyes and the nose and the mouths are accurate to their facial features. The next principle of design is rhythm. Rhythm is a movement in art and how the artwork creates a beat or how the artwork moves. So in this piece, there's two displays of rhythm that really stick out to me. One would be the men, the overlapping of their clothing. That is just like, it gives you that three-dimensional context of, oh, the men are like, you see them on the boat walking beside each other, hanging over the side, and their clothes overlapping each other, so it gives that kind of background image to where they are. The next is the lines. Going back to line and the horizontal lines, I think that creates a movement as if they're out at sea. So he's kind of creating this visual image for you with just this little tiny painting of these men being out at sea in the waves and the ocean that they're crashing while they're pondering. Rhythm is a little bit of a harder principle to incorporate, but it is very, very, very crucial that artists do that, because it can really, really make their piece unique. And then on the right, you see that is another example of rhythm. The lines keep going around and around, kind of thinking that it's spiraling down to something new, kind of creating this movement with a still piece of art. It is a really cool tool that artists can use. In conclusion, it's a beautiful piece by Jacob Lawrence. I really love the message, and I really love the meaning behind it. The message was presented very clearly, and he used all the elements of art and principles of design flawlessly. We just looked at a few that really, really stood out. And the hidden message, again, was really the thing that stood out to me, and it amazes me how artists can do this. They can create a message with just the drawings and paintings that they do, and it's really unique, and it's unique to them. So, thank you.